Okay, I guess I am doing this. We are live. Yes, we are live. So, welcome to another edition of Office Hours. I am your host, Charles Armstrong of Crammed Voice Lessons. I pronounce it cram. Some of y'all say cram D. I don't know. I'll probably have a poll for that or something. But yes, we are live with another Office Hours. For audio only, I'm on the Discord, which is linked in the doobly-doo, I think is what it's called. And yeah, let's get this started. If you're listening via Discord, there is a YouTube, check Sweet Sensation hashtag or events hashtag events channel for the link to this YouTube stream as well. Just let me minimize that and let me close out of these other noise making tabs. Okay, let's see if there's any questions popping up in voice text chat. If you are listening via Discord, please ask your questions via voice text chat. Let me see. How do you get to like the control console? Oh, I can't stand that. I can't stand. Like I started it. How do I go and see? I guess control console. Okay, hello. I like cake 12321 with a good palindrome or palindrome number in your name. Yeehaw indeed. I can also talk about country vocals if that is a request. If there are no requests, I will go over Stack Exchange questions because this is brought to you by Stack Exchange. We have a proposal going on Voice at Stack Exchange to develop an academic community to talk about voice. So we have some questions on there. I will see if I can find some of them and answer them. If you'd like to answer those questions, ask and or answer those questions in the text for this video as well. If you'd like to see these questions, you can go to, it's Ishi. Hello, Ishi. If you'd like to follow these questions, follow that link that I just put in the YouTube chat. Okay. Chloe Ichinose, aka my favorite daughter, asks, are vocal breaks damaging to the voice? No. No. But they can be a sign of vocal fatigue. So a vocal break in most people's parlance, they use it to either describe what's called a mechanism shift. So I shift from M1 to M2. That shift can sound like so that break, that pop that my voice experiences as I switch mechanisms can sometimes be heard by certain people as damage. But in reality, it's just switching the way your vocal cords are moving to hit the note, and there's sort of this decompression of air that happens, like a gear shift in a car. So when you switch gears, sometimes you can hear the engine maybe stall a little bit, and you can hear the engine move around a little bit, but it doesn't mean the engine is breaking down. But if I have problems staying in one mechanism, I might switch to another mechanism. So say your gear shift's a little messed up and doesn't like to be in second gear, so you kind of just quickly shift from second to third, and you only stay in second for a little bit. So that little like break, how it wants to go up to third, that can be the symbol of just needing to work on your ability to stay in a certain mechanism. And another thing that can be symbolized, or not symbolized, but indicated by the term vocal break is your voice is kind of hoarse and discontinuous. When your voice kind of breaks like this, that can be a symptom of vocal fatigue, sometimes damage, but usually just means inflammation. And inflammation is not forever. Inflammation's not forever, no matter what the SLPs tell you. Where is my phone charger? Let me make sure I keep my phone charged. I got people asking questions on mobile. Yes. Yeah, I do. Not everyone, Dakota. and post it again in the Facebook group. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And feel free to ask questions. Okay, while you do that, I will answer another question off of the Stack Exchange. To get your questions priority, please ask them on Stack Exchange. What are the different types of vibrato? Often by, again, by my favorite daughter, Chloe Ichino-sen. What are the different types of vibrato? You have regular vibrato, which is a fluctuation of the larynx. I believe it to be the tilt of the larynx. So it kind of like pulls the vocal folds in this sort of like seesaw motion. For those that can actually see what I'm doing on YouTube, it's this sort of seesaw motion of the vocal folds, and that will modulate the pitch of the note that you're hitting. And that'll sound like, that pitch in turn can be modulated even more, like you have an even wider seesaw. Like if my fat ass is on the seesaw with a normal size person. Let's be real. I was gonna say like 3-year-old girl, but let's be real. So when you're seesawing like that, you get more of a wide amp modulation in your vibrato, and that turns into a trill, which sounds like and then it's kind of more experimental, or it's also used in classical, but it's not as used as much in pop. Then you have tremolo, which some people call diaphragmatic vibrato. I don't like to call it vibrato because vibrato, to me, symbolizes a shift in pitch usually, but vibrato doesn't apply as much for diaphragmatic vibrato because while pitch does shift a little bit with diaphragmatic vibrato, the main variable you are changing of the voice is amplitude, how loud your voice is. So that would be like versus You can sort of do diaphragmatic quote unquote vibrato fast enough that it emulates the frequency of regular vibrato. So that would be like but it's a lot more work and it doesn't usually sound as controlled. And then there are some experimental ones like hammer vibrato, which is the continuity. You sort of change the continuity of the voice by sort of slamming the vocal folds, I believe, slamming them shut with a glottal stop. So the vibration stops and then you open back up. So it's like, Shakira does that from time to time just to complete the whole like Billy Goat landscape. Take us to the Incan mountains, Shakira. Why is no one here yet? Oh, well, I will answer more questions from Stack Exchange. Well, poor 1 Year Vlog got their thing downvoted to the depths of hell for some reason. So let me shed some light on their question, which is at the very bottom of this Stack Exchange proposal. I'm sorry about that 1 Year Vlog. I do not know what is happening. But most of the other posts have been left alone. So how can I improve my chest voice pitch by 1 Year Vlog? Chest voice most neatly corresponds to what we are calling M1. Yeah, where is Chloe? Diaphragmatic vibrato tremolo. That's an abomination. Okay, so chest most neatly corresponds to what we call M1, and it's what people talk in. So that usually should be the easiest thing to pitch because that's what we talk in. So you can sort of imagine the notes as if you're talking them. So if it's not a very wide, rangy song, let me get this. Let me debut my electric keyboard, which I'll soon be doing covers with, and play a couple things on that. So turn the volume up. So la, la, la. It doesn't even have to be super singy. Just almost hit it the way you talk. Really just hit it matter-of-factly instead of trying to make it pretty. So if you just hit it the way you talk, when we talk, we use something called intonation or tonemes. And those are sort of the inflections that we use to convey a question, to convey a command. Like, do that right now. Right now. that downward curve means like, I really mean right now. Or it's like, is it okay if I go to the bathroom? Bathroom. That kind of upward intonation means I'm asking a question. Now, there's all other kinds of intonations, like you kind of do a very flat one or dramatic one. I tend to do a dramatic one, but a lot of people do flat ones when they're trying to be sarcastic. Like, that's the best idea you've ever come up with. And it's kind of aimless and flat and not normally speech-like. So it lets you know I'm not using normal speech patterns because I'm not saying this in normal speech. I'm saying this sarcastically. Vocal break onset's a thing. I'll get to that question in a second. So when you are using those intonations that most people can use, it's usually inside of M1 or chest. So using that basis of being able to produce pitches like they're in speech, most people can do those. So if you can do those, you can hit the correct notes that you intend to hit with chest. So chest voice should be the easiest pitch to improve. I think some people overthink it when they go to sing. It's like the voice I've been talking with isn't good enough. Shout out to James H. Music for speech-based vocal pedagogy. So a vocal break onset's a thing. I usually use the term break to refer to the combination of an offset and an onset in the middle of a note. So no, I wouldn't call that a thing, but vocal breaks include onsets. You can say the onset of that next note was after a vocal break, because maybe you're just referring to break as the offset. But basically an aspirate offset or aspirate break would be like, you hear that the note fades into air and it sort of comes back with air. So that's the combination of an aspirate offset. I release air and I then restart the note through air. So that break in totality gives me both an offset then an onset. So just the onset by itself, I wouldn't really call a break because you're not really breaking apart anything. You're starting something. But some people might call it a break if you have a very long onset duration that really cuts into the body of the note. So if I'm singing a song and I have a really delayed aspirate onset, that some people might hear that as a break because it's such a delayed onset. It sounds like my voice is breaking or cracking or whatever. So that is hopefully an answer to your question. Dakota Sings asks, what causes the voice to crack more often during AMAB puberty? Why is it more prominent with some than others? My voice never cracked very much during puberty. I think my voice probably cracks more now than it does during puberty. Like my voice just does a lot of things. And what I would hazard a guess at is why some people's voices crack is basically the ratio of growth of the voice during hormones. So you have the growth of the testicles because of testosterone. Yes, you have the growth of the testicles, but you also have the growth of the vocal folds due to testosterone. You have the growth of the larynx due to testosterone. So if the no, you good, Chloe? You are always my favorite daughter. I answered 2 of your questions if you scrub behind in the video. 2 of your questions on the Stack Exchange, but maybe we paid you to upload those. I don't know. So if your vocal folds grow quicker than your larynx, you get a sort of dose of what trans guys, people that go from being assigned male to then identifying as male, you get what they call the T-flu, where your vocal folds outgrow your larynx and they sort of act weird. And it feels almost like maybe you're sick and your voice isn't quite operating normally because you have these larger vocal folds operating in a smaller space. So they'll do kind of clumsy things like you'll get maybe this sometimes. It's like the very stereotypical teenage voice hoarseness because your vocal folds are gliding on each other so hard that they will give you this kind of sound. or you get a lot of the breaks that Dakota is talking about, like this. Because sometimes it's hard to stay in M1 where the vocal folds are closer on each other because they end up being so close that sometimes it gets uncomfortable, and your vocal folds might sort of buck because they're so big and they're so like cramped in this small space. They kind of like pull apart from each other to resist this claustrophobic feeling inside your larynx, and you get the when they pop apart into M2. So from M1 to M2. So hopefully that answers your question. Let me see if there is a question. Why? Oh, thank you. Ooh, look at people actually being in the voice text chat. Let's see if there are any more questions in the YouTube. How is AFAB voice after testosterone than AMAB voice in puberty? Well, the laryngeal cartilages, generally once cartilages, or no, not cartilages, well, probably cartilages too. Once like bones fuse, once the soft, like pliable, I can't remember the name of the tissue, the connective tissue, ligaments, once those harden and the bones sort of fuse, growth is more difficult, and that includes the cartilages of the larynx. You can't really get growth after a certain point once the voice box stuff fuses and is like you're done growing and it ossifies. So for all the testosterone in the world, you're not going to get much more growth of your laryngeal space. So your vocal folds are going to always maybe feel a little bit more unwieldy after testosterone. Like by all means, it'll help you lower your voice, and I don't think it's like an inescapable, like irreparable damage will be done to your voice. But as your vocal folds grow and your larynx doesn't grow with them, you're more likely to get certain behaviors that cis men don't necessarily feel in their vocal folds after puberty. So you can behaviorally adapt to these awkward things. Oh, press phonation. Dang. Sorry, all these new things on the YouTube, I didn't even notice them. What did Bon Jovi even say? Thank you, Dakota. I answer that. Uthro asks, press phonation, what is it physiologically and why is it harmful? I honestly don't entirely know what everybody means when they say press phonology, because everybody and their mama trying to use this term. When everybody and their mama uses this term, you know there's like 1,000 wrong definitions for a term that is being used in ways that's not supposed to be used. I don't think of any phonation as inherently harmful. There's no noise I can think of that's like, this is harmful and can only be done by harming your voice. I can, like, if I try, like, I can make horrible noises that I'll make for Chloe in a second, but none of those noises I'm like, oh, I can only make this by harming my voice. Like, yes, some noises are more likely for me to harm my voice. Press phonation, if I had to guess from what people are out here trying to say, is very compressed vocal folds, like accessory muscles in the vocalis. Like there's this hyperconstriction such that the vocal folds don't have a high degree of motion away from each other. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you sort of see my hands acting like vocal folds. So they, instead of getting like a nice glide apart like this, and it's a nice sort of steady glide together, kind of like and that might be something like this, where it goes beyond having a high close quotient and interjects like, yes, it has a high close quotient, but it also presses together really hard. So that is something that I think might constitute press phonation. And at the level of the true vocal folds is most important, I think, would be the tension for what I think people refer to as press phonation. Linguistically, there's something called like harsh voice that might be similar. I think that involves areoepiglottic constriction and maybe even vibration of the areoepiglottic folds. And that would be harsh voice or something like this. Yeah. Hopefully that is helpful. So distorted whistle for Chloe. Hopefully she hears this. So I don't know how to like. I don't know what format you want it in. I'll just like make the noise. So hopefully that demonstrated that was like a whistle happening underneath the distortion. Because sometimes when you do like a really heavy distortion, it's hard to tell what mechanism it is because you get what are called aperiodicities. I do this weird thing when I'm using a term that other people use and that other people might know. I'll say like what I call, even though I didn't make the term aperiodicities, but then when I coin a term for something, I'll say what is called, as if like the mumbo jumbo that I made up. Like apparently I made up the term glottal zippering, but that's just me. Sips hand sanitizer. What was I say? When I say like glottal zippering, as if I made up that term, or if I say what's the term? What's the term that I made up? What is a term that only I say? Register cannibalism, like eating. So I'll say like register cannibalism is a term that people use. Like I'm not people. I'm barely a person. So yeah, like ignore me when I do that. This is the weird tick I have. So thank you, John Smith, for the compliment on my hair. I feel like I know who you are because I like a John Smith in my Google Hangouts that I've called with before, but I feel like their name isn't actually John Smith. So let me know if you don't say like your full name if you don't want to, but let me know if your name's actually John Smith, if like I know you as something else. So yeah, that was whistle. Ask Nick about precipitation or true fold distortion. Okay. Yeah, Nick, I trust his definition. I don't trust these average people, these plebeians that come to me. Yeah, people like probably hella misquote Nick, so I don't know because we haven't talked about it as much. The kind of reductions. Okay, you can sort of semi-constrict the false vocal folds to get more true vocal fold compression. They can be sort of used like an accessory muscle and bringing just that area of the laryngopharynx together. My theory is that they narrow that inside of the laryngopharynx, and that helps the vocal folds come together by proxy. I don't know if there's any like muscular insertion that actually like drags the vocal folds together, but in several things, the vocal folds approximate a lot. The false vocal folds tend to come together as well, even if they're not co-vibrating, even if they're not adding a distortion. So in general, that compression happens with the false vocal folds. So yeah, I think they can be involved, but my definition of press-phonation doesn't directly implicate the false folds. How are the cuneiform cartilages involved in false vocal fold screaming? There's the cuneiform cartilages, and there's the other cartilage that's just next to it. I can't read. So I forget which one is which. There's like the more like distal ones. Distal means like further out. So like my arm is moving distally. And then medially is like more towards the center. So there's like the distal cartilages, and there's like a bump, and then there's like the cartilages that are right next to it. So I can't remember. And I think they both start with C. Let me look this up. Cuneiform starts with C. Or since that is false, cuneiform with C. Cuneiform cartilage. Well, is it both? Is it both of those cartilages are called cuneiform? It's not like subdivided. Let me make sure I know. Corniculate. Those are the other cartilages. So yeah, the cuneiform cartilages, I don't think about them as being directly, or the cartilages in general, I don't think about as like playing a role in something because they're cartilage. It's like your ear. Like what role does the cartilage of the ear play in like those people that can move their ears? What role does it play in that? Or like what role does the spongy tissue of your dick play in getting a hard on? Like, it's a passive agent that's moved by muscles or moved by being filled with blood, like a penis. So those are not directly causative of anything in false fold screaming, but you can use them as sort of landmarks of where that happens. So the cuneiform cartilages do tend to compress inward, if I'm remembering correctly, during false fold screaming. And they might even do so in fry screaming, with like really tight fry screaming. They play a role in compressing the laryngopharynx to bring these super glottic bodies together, to include the false folds and probably the aeroglottic folds, to have them co-vibrate with the vocal folds to give that those harmonics and distortions that we hear as screaming. Corniculate. Okay, thank you, you throw. An E. John Smith's name starts with an E. Is it M? I feel like John Smith has been here before M. I've interacted with the John Smith on my Hangouts before M. Everybody out here trying to be John Smith. But let me not out this person. Okay, but thank you, John Smith, again for your compliment on my hair. How do you bell? I would imagine cuneiform cartilages are involved similarly, but I think the corniculate, if they are the more like exterior distal ones, they are probably more involved in the constriction. You can look at what's it called? Mal Webb's stroboscopy on the Water Nodes pin posts on that channel in my Discord. For those of you who are not on my Discord, it is in, oh no, it's not. It is not in the description of this video. I will have to add that later on. But for those of you that want to be linked to my Discord, ask in the YouTube comments and you will be linked. Ask it, obviously. So cuneiform probably less. How do you belt? John Smith, just accept that belting is yelling. I have a whole module on belting inside my server, so if you want to learn more, ask there. How do you belt is just such a very broad question because there's so many like areas of belting. There's so many forms of belting. Belting changes as you move up through different extensions. People have different issues with belting. So to get started belting, just embrace. If you never belted before, just embrace. Just yell! Just yell and hold it on a note. In control of yelling like this. Just yell at all your bitches and get used to it. And then eventually, you can use it to yell a bitch! And like do stuff with it and actually turn it into something more singy. But really it's just like dressed up yelling. I should have brought something to drink in here. I really should have. Something get dry. It's gonna be hard doing all these things. How are OQ and CQ controlled on a muscular level? For me, I control it with my mind because my mind is the strongest muscle in my vocal arsenal. But OQ and CQ, like they are more a result, I feel like, of a calculus dance between different variables of the vocal tract, like what subglottal pressure is, how adducted the vocal folds are, like how close they are together, how stretched they are, like vertically. Graf and I were talking, and he mentioned sort of like assessing the vocal folds vertically, which I'm assuming is like posterior to anterior, anterior to posterior, as is described in glottal zippering, the paper that I apparently wrote on glottal zippering. Thank you, Dakota, for linking that. Same question with MCQ. Mucosal contact quotient. Is that what MCQ is? I think it's mucosal contact quotient. So yeah, that's controlled by several different variables. When I tell people to like alter the quotient, I'm going for that feeling of how the altered quotient feels. Like, 'cause just like electroglottographs can conduct the conductance of electricity through your vocal folds. You can you can feel the conduction of vibration through your vocal folds. So you can feel these shaking, trembling of your vocal folds more when they're more connected, higher close quotient or higher mucosal contact quotient. So you can feel those things. Mucosal contact quotient and close quotient tend to be on the same axis. Tend to be on the same axis of like what controls them, what increases them, I think, in my book. So in practice, I don't talk as much about mucosal contact quotient, but I think an example of where that would change with like independently of close quotient would be when you have glottal configurations that use more vocal fold mass, like M1 versus M2, or different forms of M1 and M2 that use different amounts of vocal fold body. So the ones that use more vocal fold body will end up, my brain just like turns off sometimes, I'm sorry, will end up having a higher MCQ. Okay, let me get the chord closure. No. F, okay. Can I do a demonstration of FEF constriction and pharyngeal constriction and isolation? Thank you all for these questions. These questions are bomb.com. Let me check the voice text chat to see. Oh, is Ed watching? Oh, that's John Smith. Tricky. Okay, how to do aspirant breaks. I will answer that question in 2 seconds. Wow. Thank you, Dakota. I just saw your DM. Wow. Racism is alive and well. Isn't yelling dangerous? Oh, Jesus. Okay, I have so much to get to. I'm sorry. Okay, so how do you do aspirant breaks? That, I think this is a module. It's like you breathe and then start the note with a delay. Or aspirant breaks, you do that in the middle of a note. I can't give anymore, or whatever. You kind of aspirate, release, and then bring it back in with aspiration. Okay. Oh, what? I did that by accident. That was another aspirate break. Can I do a demonstration of FEF constriction and pharyngeal constriction and isolation? Yes, I can. I'm not sure how you would confuse those things, but yeah, I can do that. So FEF constriction is like or wait, constriction, not necessarily distortion. So when they're constricted, it's like you get that old man wheezy kind of sound. Is the easiest way to hear it when you kind of wheeze. So and then pharyngeal constriction will be like really crying. But I don't sound necessarily as strained at the level of my false vocal folds. It's still like a pretty loose sound down low. So yeah, this is a high pharyngeal constriction, I think. And this is a high false fold constriction, which doesn't sound the same. It's just like a chordal, like a pressphonation, I think, where you have high vocal fold compression. So hopefully that gave you something. Okay, hello, John Smith again. What is the difference between chord closure and open quotient? Chord closure is like the mucosal contact quotient defines what I refer to as quote unquote closure, which is how clothed the vocal folds are, how much of them are in contact, how much of the vocal folds are not in contact. Which varies more based on mechanism. And open quotient is how much of the vibratory cycle the vocal folds spend apart. So to put it in practical terms, because people are often asking how these things can be applied practically, because they don't all have my vision. Chord closure amounts you can think of in terms of meatiness of sound, in terms of how much of your vocal fold mass you're using, which is how mechanisms tend to differ. And then open quotient and closed quotient, you can think of sort of density or weight rather than like meatiness, if that makes sense. Okay, yelling is not dangerous. You throw asks, do you think that increasing non-belted M1 range is more of a muscular or more of a coordination thing? Can you train this range by simply increasing belting range, or should it be more targeted? I think it's both. I think belt is more, if I had to say this one is more muscle than coordination, I'd say belt is more muscle than coordination. But things like learning M3, that's more coordination than muscle. It's like more muscle memory than muscular strength. But I think people, when they fail in belt, are often doing the right coordination. They just aren't strong enough to hold on to that coordination. Sorry. So that would be like if I try to belt and my voice gets sort of vacuum sucked into fry during that belt. It's not because I don't know how to do a coordination and belting without fry, like where you about to fail like that. It's not because I don't know how to not belt with fry. It's just I'm not strong enough to abduct to restrict my vocal folds during belt so that they don't like come together and grind like in fry and not grind in any kind of harmful way necessarily. So could the drainage could be more targeted. So an example of where I think it'd be more of a coordination issue is I experienced this, don't tell nobody, where I try to belt in a certain range, I get stuck in that range, I forget how to belt. And the other range is gonna get stuck on the coordination of that belting range. For more about different belting coordinations, check out the Discord for modules on the different extensions of belting. Where is the tab? Okay. And can you train this range by simply increasing belting range to be more targeted? I'm not quite sure what you mean. How do you find your vibrato? How do you find vibrato? It does help. Like, a lot of people will be like, well, just let your throat be free, and the vibrato fairy will come from the skies with gumdrops and oatmeal raisin cookies, and you will be given vibrato. And from that day forward, you will be a white woman. Like, a lot of people try to act like it's a magical thing that is bestowed upon you that you have to be open to. And it's true that reducing tension helps make you more quote unquote receptive for vibrato. You want to make sure the extrinsic muscles controlling like the larynx and stuff, the larynx positionality, that those are as relaxed as possible when you're trying to go for vibrato. So if you're kind of like this, if you have a lot of tension, I don't know if you can see it that well, but if you have a lot of tension in your neck, you're less likely to get that vibrato. I do several things to train vibrato, but that's probably the first one, is reduce that tension. If you want more, it honestly takes a little bit. So I suggest stick around for a vibrato module, or you can sign up for lessons on my Patreon. Yeah, I don't even know about CVT's carbon because people were saying it had parallels to conodal. I don't CVT. I CV can't. However, no, the different larynx heights are not unsafe, John Smith. when you talk about pharyngeal constriction, what specifically do you mean? Which muscles are constricted? There are actually 3 muscles called pharyngeal constrictors. There's like the superior, the inferior, I think is how they're sorted. I'm not sure which pharyngeal constriction muscles give you this kind of sound. I'm not even entirely sure that they're pharyngeal constrictors, but it honestly feels like pharyngeal constrictors to me. And what really confirms it for me is like I read literature about yawning and other like swallowing and other tests that involve the pharynx. And it feels similar to when I swallow or yawn. When you yawn and your laryngopharynx widens, but your like oropharynx and naropharynx maybe feel more constricted. And I feel like I've looked in a mirror also and maybe seen some pharyngeal constriction action going on, but it's a little bit lower. So I would say like oronasopharynx, somewhere in that boundary is where that pharyngeal constriction happens. And Graf can tell you more about this, but there are like muscles called the pharyngeal constrictors that constrict the actual volume of the pharynx. And I feel like timbrally, it has something a little bit similar to twang, which twang is also, and this is why people call it pharyngeal voice, which is dumb, but it's a constriction of the pharynx. So these things like timbrally have a kind of brightening to them that I feel like is achieved by reducing the volume of the pharynx and emphasizing higher harmonics that pass through the pharynx. Yeah. Higher low larynx is not inherently unsafe. Am I catching up? What I meant is if increasing belting range also increases non-belted M1 range. Thank you, Dakota, for linking everything. What I meant is if increasing belting range also increases non-belted M1 range, or if you should target this non-belted M1 range. So separately, yes, you have to target it separately. My jury is out on whether or not to teach like belted M1 first before like non-belted. I would probably want to teach non-belted M1, but I feel like people are just so flimsy and weak with new M1 up there that it helps to really grab M1 up there. But then it makes it hard to sort of unlearn all that intensity, and you can have like M1 cannibalism of itself maybe. So non-belted M1 range. What's the other thing? Oh, people need to stop trying to like drag non-belted M1 range like D5. Like, oh, non-belted M1 D6. Like, it really non-belted M1 makes like no difference once you get to like F4, which is where it canonically stops anyways. It really stylistically is not worth the effort. Like, I can do non-belted M1 on an A4, but it honestly sounds so much like the M2 that there is really like, once you get a good mix, there's really like no difference. So it's like if you have a really rich M3 that is really well controlled and consistent, and you can use that in a way that doesn't eat up your M2, I would say it's not really worth it to like spend all your life trying to push your M2 up. Like, yes, flageolet or hyper extended like superhead M2 is something worth pursuing, but it's not like, oh, it's not real until I can do this. If you're not trying to like wail an M2 on an A6, then you really don't need M2 up that high, because like M2 and M3 start to sound the same once you get to like F6 and everything. They start to really sound the same. Non-belted M1 and mix 2. We have a request for demonstration for that. But first, John Smith asked, I have asthma. Is there a way to learn breath support? Breath support is not affected by asthma unless your asthma condition means you have like a hole in your diaphragm. I was actually doing, I volunteer with this thing that does science for middle schoolers, and we were dissecting a dog. Oh my God, my mind broke behind. Never got to dissect no large animal, but this thing was huge, and we saw its diaphragm, and like you had to cut through the diaphragm to get to the upper organs like the lungs and the heart. And the diaphragm is like something. That thing is like that's a muscle. That is something. It is difficult to get through. So diaphragmatic defects. With that being said, diaphragmatic defects, in my opinion, are rare. So I doubt asthma comes with those. Usually asthma refers to the constrictions of the bronchioles inside the lungs, which interferes with the ability to actually absorb the air, but doesn't interfere inherently with your ability to hold air as much or to manage your air. So it can be difficult because you have less air to work with. You can't absorb air as quickly, but you can still manage that air intelligently. So using your diaphragm with some kind of consciousness is key to that. You want to very much manage and not like let out air when you don't intend to, and not to like put excessive air that isn't being used into your phonation. So to answer that question, yes, you can sing with asthma by all means. Yes, it will be a little bit harder, but asthma does not interfere with what people refer to as breath support. So demonstration of non-belted M1 and mixed 2. So non-belted M1 up pretty high. It's like this. Oh crap. this. You hear the pop? So that's non-belted M1. That's up pretty high. And then mixed 2 be like so. M1, M2, M1, M2. Like it sounds so similar. What's canodal? Shakira, yes, Shakira uses canodal, and canodal is when the back of your tongue and often the epiglottis cover the vocal tract or obstruct the vocal tract, and it gives you this thicker, darker sound. And yeah, that's canodal. Yep. This time for Africa. Oh my God. Rika is love. Rika is life. Hello, Dry Alex. Feel free to ask questions in voice text chat. Okay, if there's no other questions, we're coming down to the last 10 minutes. And I will answer another Stack Exchange question. Let me like not answer on. Wow, John Smith asked stuff. Thank you, John Smith, for asking those questions. I feel like I've answered a lot of the ones that are by like people I talk to anyways. Let me check to see if there's any more questions in here or in voice text chat. I guess there are not. Can people in voice text chat hear me? Or can people on the server hear me? Okay, well, since I feel like I've, yes. Thank you. Nowadays, most people you find have postural problems. Do you think the effect of these postural problems, anterior pelvic tilt, pelvic floor imbalances, lordosis? I don't even know if I know what kyphosis is, but lordosis! So lordosis is, should I demonstrate it? It's like back in, ass out. This is the way we like to be abused by daddy. So like lordosis is in mammals a sexual position. It's probably used to refer to things outside of this, but lordosis is like kind of like this, if y'all can see. Oh my God. It's basically like horizontal twerking. And that is used to make delivery of gametes into the female of the species more facilitated. Okay, Yutho's been a good boy, so I will twerk. So do most people have postural problems? Do you think the effect of these postural problems are too often disregarded as a cause of trouble with breathing? I will twerk while I answer this question. I don't know if you can even see my twerking, but I honestly don't think that posture is that implicated in ease of breathing, especially what is required for singing. I think for life, sometimes improper posture can cause stuff, but maybe I would say that's because of like airway disturbance, that I'm like choking off a certain part of the airway. Fun fact, I actually did not learn how to twerk until I think like 2014 or 2015. And that's when I realized, I saw this, like I'd seen several years prior, this video called like Dick Slang, where a bunch of people just like with no underwear just did the Dick Slang dance, where they just like moved their penises around in a circle. I know I'm just keeping it PG-13 all on this chat. And I was like, oh shit, that's something. And then several years later, I was living with a prostitute, and she's like, well, you gotta twerk. No context. And basically, I figured out if I thought of it as doing a dick slang, if I thought about what the front of my body was doing rather than the back of my body, it was a lot easier to twerk. So, okay, let me turn it into overdrive and finish answering this question. So, nobody can say I'm not a fun vocal teacher. So, do I think posture impedes normal singing? No, but I think it can lead to airway constrictions and people doing dumb stuff with their airway that can make their breath less efficient. And I think it's not as much about like total body posture, but about sort of angling. Like there's certain angles of the body where like the airway is going to be more obstructed, but you can't say, oh, well, it's like, well, you have to stand up, well, you have to sit down. It's more of a like orthostatic, if that's the right word to use, thing of like the positioning of one part of my airway relative to another. Okay. Is it possible? Networking tips. Wow, isn't it? Okay. Is it possible to belt in a mix from JW? Hello, JW. If you're new here, please feel free to join my Discord server and also my Stack Exchange, where you can also ask your vocal questions. Somebody link both. You throw, since I just twerked for you, link those things. Thank you. So is it possible to belt in a mix? What people often refer to as a mix when it comes to belting is using M2, and I would not call that true belting. In literature, people call that faux belting. There's all kinds of conservatories, like musical theater schools and training academies, that are specifically saying we want M1 or quote unquote TA dominant belting, which means like a belting that's more like yelling. So yes, you can emulate belting and mix, and I think it's valid to do that. I think there's times where that is more what you want than to full out belt. But would I truly call that belt on a technical level? I personally would not call what most people call mixed belting on a technical level to be belt. But that doesn't mean it's inferior or wrong or that you should never use it. Lord, I can't believe I'm selling myself out like this. Really? Oh, that's weird. Kaz, do you have any questions? Can y'all even hear me? Let me make sure. Yes, it seems like I'm going off. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna do start doing covers on this channel. I'm going to do them as live streams, and Premium will have access to these live streams, and they'll get to ask me questions about how I constructed these covers. Like, I'll have a basic spiel that I'll give about it, and I'll answer people's questions about like the vocal decisions that I made, because a lot of people want to see like, well, that's nice that you can make these noises, but how do I use them in context? And then when I actually try to show stuff in context, nobody wants to listen. So yeah, Stack Exchange and Discord. Thank you, Dakota. So yeah, that answers that belt mix question, hopefully. I know you say to approach differently. I hate you. But I have issues with B4s. A4, C5. Okay, so Kaz, how would I approach these B4s? So you're talking about the tenor extension of belting where it sort of becomes compressed. So you're going to lose a bit of quote-unquote vocal weight past the A4, and some of that is accepting that change and feeling that change and still trying to make your voice sound heavy, but accepting that a glottal configuration change can and should happen. So feeling for that, making sure you're not trying to like just completely drag up and you get sort of stuck before you can even get to the B4, because what'll happen is the belt will usually curve downwards, or you won't get all the way up to the note you're trying to get to, because you're trying to use like regular modal yelling to get past A4. And it's also just I need to hear specifically what's happening with the belt to fully say. But for that region, it's honestly practice makes perfect. Just holding them for longer periods. Sometimes doing like a little bit of the lower one. Like if you can do an A4 decently, you can hold on to that A4. And that work should take you up to the D#5. It's honestly, it sounds a bit squeezed and thin. I had to hear exactly what you mean, but it should sound a bit squeezed. It should sound a bit thinner. You can work on making it sound thicker, but honestly, the glottal configuration is something that's going to thin it. It's going to get a little bit, quote unquote, thinner than your regular like modal yelling. But you can do stuff to compensate for that. So you'll feel it thin, but you won't actually be sound-wise as thin. Oh my God. How do you get your E5 belts better? A lot of people try to like really hurry to get past that G#5 mark. But honestly, until you have your bearings at like C#5 through D#5, I wouldn't work too hard on the E5s, because you want a good reference point of being able to belt around that range with some intensity, because that glottal configuration change as you go from D#5 to E5 can lighten even more than the A4 belting change. I just went over this with what is their name? Gabriel on the server Aret's Nod. Let me tag them. Mind explaining the sensations you feel around E5 belt. No. E5 belt to at. There we go. Oh my God. Oh my God, Rika, I love you. So it tends to thin out. So I don't really work on the belts below and not rush, because if you just rush up, you'll have M1 up high, but it just sounds so thin, it's harder to thicken. What the hell? Oh my God, my mom is so strange. Okay, let's see if there are any more questions in there. Faux belt tips. Okay, so faux belt is when you use M2 to emulate the sound of belt. I find crescendoing can help, because for me, I'm just like, with actual belting, when you go from that to really trying to use belt, faux belt. Will do, Mom. I'm teaching right now. Love you. Okay, so belting, faux belting. So when you belt, normally you start off at the intensity that is belt, but M2 is so easy to not be in a belt intensity with. Like just using M1 high pretty much mandates, and once you get high, it pretty much mandates a certain intensity. So you kind of have to, if anything, de-escalate for the intensity. But with faux belts, you have to build sometimes to that intensity, because you don't start the note with all the intensity. Sometimes crescendoing can help if you really want to get that like beltier sound. So like, doing that can be helpful. Crescendoing, because sometimes I might start and I think I'm belting, like let me do a little bit higher, or to me that like had nice intensity, it had like nice chord closure, had nice high close quotient, but it didn't feel as like belty as like so sometimes to find that intensity you have to crescendo up to find it, like and then maybe start on a hard glottal onset, like Seattle Voice Institute tells you will give you cancer, and hit that really hard at the outset and say goodbye to your larynx, and that will hopefully start you off at relatively high intensity, like a nice hard glottal onset. I find helps me with it. It's like a but to find that intensity behind that, to find that high subglottal pressure to keep it going, I crescendo first. So I find that through a crescendo, and I try to start at that intensity with a glottal strike. Okay, I think that is it for questions, unless somebody has access to dresses. Oh my God. Say yes to the dress. Yes, dress, Rika. Oh my God. Wait, is Ed just saying my twerking now too? Wait, that is a huge delay. Whoa, y'all are watching me twerk 10 minutes ago. That's wild. What? Oh my God, I'm confused, Sean. Okay, so yeah, you just got done eating, so I'm trying to give you these cakes for dessert, Ed. I'm looking out for you. Okay, so that's it for today. Oh, okay. What's the fastest way to destroy one's voice? In a way that's only using the voice. I think the easiest way to get the vocal folds to interact with each other harmfully is to do very intense false fold phonations. So Kagura is like a like that. But to do that in a way that hurts, which is hard to do on purpose. But if you're like a novice at it, that could mess you up pretty quick. And belting poorly, like belting in a way that hurts, that could be pretty damaging. So yeah, so maybe combine the both and do like a belted Kagura. Yeah, that's M1. That feels like easier. I'm kind of cheating out of belting and doing it. It's like I'm doing it quote unquote right. So yeah, like if you do that in a harmful way, that could probably be the quickest way to destroy your voice. Is this a plot? Are we plotting on a certain Redditor to destroy their voice? Okay, I am going to sign off soon, but as a present to Chloe for being the baddest bitch, I am going I am going to see if I can get it together to play a little bit of one of the covers that I'm going to do on this channel. Be patient because I need to get this a little bit better and get used to playing this keyboard. Some of the notes I'm missing on this keyboard. Okay, without any more excuses. What crap. Wow, that was bad. To get my happiness, I've done everything, but had done nothing to be blamed or accused of. The sound of footsteps became louder every day. Then I noticed the fact that there was no time. Okay, that's all y'all get. I love y'all. Any other questions? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Buy me a better piano with the notes that actually work. You ask dumb ones. You always ask dumb ones. Can I cover Etta James, please? Delay down to 4 minutes. No. Spanish has a much higher compression ratio. I didn't rasp how to. Oh, girl, watch the clip. I sent you a damn clip on how to find those are the different rasps. Which one do you want? There are several different kinds of rasps. That's a dumb question. You know better than that. I'm signing off. Bitch, no. Next time. You'll learn next time. How do I breathe? How do I sing? I can't answer that question. How do I rasp? Boy. Let me go. Bye.